The hospital is going to be getting appraisals on properties down there in that area of Columbia Street. And so that work is going to be getting underway, I think, next year. But they're looking at doing appraisals and what are they going to pay these people? This is going to be the interesting part of this. Some may walk away happy. Others might not be happy. I mean, some have to replace what they currently, like Clementi's. How do you replace that building? And that building's in pretty nice shape. On the line right now, Tim Creamer is with the New York State School Board Association. Over 98% of school budgets passed. All of ours passed in the area. Tim, good morning. Haven't seen this in a while.
Actually, it has not been much different in years past. Probably 100% in your area has probably been different.
Right.
That 98, 99% has been the trend ever since we had this tax cap in place for the last 5 years.
So, tax cap, good? Bad?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to, and it's part of a funding plan that has several moving parts. The tax cap will work if the state puts forward enough state aid to supplement the cost increases. You know, we are tied at the local level to the rate of inflation, which is now almost zero.
Yeah.
Our costs are going up beyond the rate of inflation. Therefore, we need the state to step up and do what it did this year and provide a significant increase in state aid.
Yeah. This gap elimination, where are we there? And certainly our schools all received more money than they have in the past, which allowed them, and many of them, to offer up a tax decrease this year.
Oh, a tax decrease. Okay, well, you do have some that perhaps went that way. There were 90-plus school districts that had a negative tax cap, which required them to actually consider lowering their levy from what it was in the current fiscal year. I'm not sure that was ever an intended consequence of the tax cap. I think it has really caused us to have a lot of concerns about if this is sustainable going forward. But you do have state aid that came through this year, almost $1.5 billion, and in the course of that, paid off that thing you referred to, the gap elimination adjustment, which was this pool that was used to help the state get back on track. It's gone. It's paid off. We don't have to worry about it anymore, and now we can focus on a more equitable and predictable state aid formula.
Now, some will say, though, that the schools, what they haven't gotten over the last several years, are still owed that money. They're probably never going to see that. Do you agree with that?
I would not bank on getting that money.
Getting that money back.
Tim, if I can ask as well, the lawsuits that were started because of that, do those go away now, or do those exist still?
No, they still exist because that funding formula has not been put in place in the way in which those folks would say it needs to be. The idea that there's be a foundation aid formula that is linked to pupils and regional cost factors and a district's ability to pay. That formula has not yet been resolved, and those lawsuits that are out there right now are still alive.
And the problem is it's so difficult to get that to be resolved because it ends up being so political. I mean, ultimately, the school districts like ours up here with low property values are struggling. And then you take a look at the more wealthy areas, maybe Long Island, for instance, and, you know, there are people that are saying, hey, we paid enough, we can't pay any more. And those legislators don't seem to want to give. I mean, this is really a complex problem. Do you see that?
Absolutely. It's a very political and complex problem, which is why plaintiffs have gone to court. They feel as if that they have a better chance of getting a fair shake by the courts rather than trying to legislate or lobby for something where what I say is fair differs from your definition of fair.
All right. The other thing I think a lot of people, including myself, are very confused over is the tax cap. So we put in place, the governor puts in place this 2% tax cap, which municipalities and school districts were all like, oh, my God, this is a problem. Sometimes we have to go over that, and you need a supermajority required to be able to pass the budget if it ends up failing, I believe. But it's not always 2%, right? It varies based on what?
You got it. It isn't 2%. It was sold as a 2% tax cap, but for the first couple of years was 2% because the rate of inflation was higher than 2%.
Right.
Since then, the rate of inflation has been going down, lower and lower, to the point where it's now almost zero. And the tax cap law reads that the cap will be 2% or CPI, Consumer Price Index, whichever is lower. So that's where your starting point is. Every district gets a different calculation. A variety of things come into play. But on average, the tax levy limits that were in play across the state were less than 1% this year. And as far as a supermajority, we had 36 school districts that attempted to exceed their tax levy limit. That means that, and many of them had a negative tax levy limit, so they were trying to lessen the pain. But they had 36 of them. 78% of them passed. This is a big deal because what this means is, for the first time, communities are starting to say, you know what, the cap's too onerous. It's something that we can't sustain good quality programs with. We're going to try to exceed it, and they did in almost three-quarters of those school districts.
What do you say also to these school districts? Like, take, for instance, in our area, our Herkimer Central School District. They opted not to merge, and you know that the governor wants everybody to merge, and he'd gladly, it seems, see these districts penalized. So they're placed in a really tough position where they got to cut teachers. They have to cut programs, opportunities for these kids, just in order to keep things at a level playing field because of the tax cap. Do these schools have any future beyond merge?
Well, that's a very good question. You know, what we do have, of course, upstate in particular, is a loss of enrollment. Many districts have lost significant numbers, and the funding mechanisms that are in place don't recognize some of those changing conditions as accurately and as quickly as they need to. This is a complicated thing. There are districts that probably should merge, and yet, when put to a vote of the local communities, most times, the communities say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's both, financially it might not make sense to sustain some of these school districts. Politically, socially, the community residents say, we need our schools. We're very proud of our schools. We're going to find a way to make this work.
All right, Tim, we really appreciate the time. Tim Kramer from the New York State School Board Association. Manansky always talks about this. It's like, man, we've been talking about this for 10 years, and it seems like we have the same argument, the same complaints, and the same issues year after year after year. It's crazy.
Well, this is a big year. This is what you get as high a passage rate as we've got.
Yeah, this is
good
big.
State aid packages we've gotten. And we had some excellent people elected to school boards along the way. I feel pretty good about the way things are right now.
All right, good stuff. Tim, thanks. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Got a break. Hold on. Coming back at WIBX.